it's pretty crisp. All right, sound speeding, Gabriel. This sounds pretty good right now. My theory was that you and Andy would have pretty much the same. You guys would need the same gain setting.
Yeah.
I think I'm probably right about that.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Andy, can you hear okay? It's only going to come in through one ear because we're splitting a stereo feed.
I'm getting great audio right now.
Okay.
Yeah?
You're taking good care of me.
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
I'm going to turn your...
I wanted to provide
Andy
you
has a
snacks and
softer
water,
voice than you,
but,
dude.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, I never got this motherfucker a water.
We'll do it live. That's fine.
We'll do it live. Yeah.
Damn.
On whatever. Are you good without it?
If I start choking or something,
okay.
I'll make it correction, but I think we'll be all right.
All right.
Wait, let's clap in. Let's clap in.
Let's clap. All right, so Andy, on one,
no
we
precursor.
clap. Okay. 3, 2... All right.
Nail it. No second chances.
Yeah,
Welcome to the No Second Chances
Andy, you
podcast.
botched it. You botched it. No, it's fine. He blew it.
It was
terrible.
It was the first start.
it
we
was
gotta,
not good.
we got to do it again.
You should have.
There's no second chances.
You should have
You
seen
had
the
your
look on
shot.
Andy's face. It was almost like he just witnessed Cthulhu represent his entire life before his eyes. It was just like.
In that moment, I mean, I'm watching this red line right now. So in that moment, I saw what I had done.
Yeah.
And,
you kind of saw it like empirically.
Yeah.
Wow.
We got you.
You can't go back though.
Dale, did we get him? We got him.
Yeah, we got him. We
Sometimes.
wanted to trick him. We had
Welcome
talked
to the
about
attic. We did it.
Yeah.
You are officially an attic person.
I know. I feel very honored to be here.
you're inducted.
Colin and I go way back.
We do go way back.
Colin, can you give an introduction for your boy?
This is Andrew Nallathambi, a great friend of mine from USC, fellow Phi Delta Theta. We were in the same fraternity at USC. So I've known each other for like 6 years, roughly.
Yeah.
Long time.
Dang.
Yeah.
And he's just always we're in the same major at USC as well.
Yes.
Both cinema and media studies majors.
We took some. We were in the trenches together.
Oh god. Classes, we had some good teachers. We had some awful ones. I remember the awful ones. I also remember the great ones, like Todd Boyd.
Yeah.
Drew Casper.
Yeah. The memories class we took.
Yeah, and we were. I love.
Fantastic.
Priya Jaikumar, right?
Yes.
She was great. She was
fantastic.
awesome.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we were in the same major in a lot of the same like sections of the same classes.
Yeah.
Right? Like we were literally in the same sections for a ton of classes.
Very synced up. It's funny. Colin and I would often have to, like silently, but we would give each other looks during.
A lot of looks.
Just to being okay. That's the take we're gonna go.
Did you
with.
guys ever feel like you were competing in school?
No.
No. This is the
all.
moment I knew we weren't competing. The first time I read something Colin wrote, I was like, we're not the same. Because I also wrote things in college.
That's very.
And
kind.
I was like, this is there's different levels to this.
Okay.
And Colin is clearly.
Are you talking about like
level.
papers I wrote or like scripts and things?
Well, I was primarily referring to stream. If you want to insult my essays as well, like, they were,
okay.
I mean, they weren't
Jesus
as good.
Christ. I was like, did Andy like read one of my? No.
Anyway,
I wrote
but
fire
it's
essays too, though. That's what I just wanted
of course. I mean, that's the basis for all of
The
it.
man.
All to say that it's a pleasure. I mean, Colin and I have known each other for 6 years, and it's been so cool and so fascinating. I think so cool. Such a pleasure as a friend just to see you evolve and grow as an artist.
Yeah.
And also just develop your tastes and your takes, and get to see you ripped in the attic. Colin and I spent a lot of time in basements. In college together. It was the first time we're in an attic. So
Hell yeah.
There you go.
That's what I'm talking about.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
What, that was the one in the chamber, huh?
Yeah. I was saving that one. I was thinking about that all day.
That was good. You got him. Got him.
Yeah, there we go. Come on. Give it to me.
That was like, oh wow, I love that. Andy and I used to literally just, we would just talk. No, I never felt like we were competing ever. And not because of the flattering thing that he said, but just because like we would just class would if we were in the same section of the same class would end and we would be walking down like Fig or down whatever the fuck Adams or whatever McClintock,
Hoover,
and we'd just be like talking about what we just watched, like talking about all sorts of fucking things. Like anytime I saw Andy, we would end up just talking about movies.
Hell yeah.
Or TV shows or music even. Like, yeah.
Is Andy also a hip hop head?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm deep.
For sure.
I'm not as much of a Lupe head as you are.
Okay, yeah. I'm a big... Andy, we would talk hip-hop, talk movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Art, everything, Books, poetry, whatever you got,
Do you have a favorite visual artist?
Visual artist?
Yeah.
Fine artist?
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and say at the moment my favorite visual artist, cinema, visual essayist, director, filmmaker, producer is Koganada, who did a lot of videos for Sight and Sound. and then he went on to direct features now, and he's done Columbus.
After Yang.
He did After Yang.
Yes.
He directed a lot of Pachinko. I think he's a fantastic director. So
dude, I gotta watch Pachinko.
It's my favorite show of the year. Yeah.
Andy and I
it's
are
getting close. Because every week I watch The White Lotus, and I'm like, ooh, we're getting close. But as of now, Pachinko I think is my favorite. I think it'll remain.
I gotta watch Pachinko. Yeah, Kogonada came into our master, like our seminar. We'd have like our Friday seminar at AFI, and he came in, and he was really great. And I watched After Yang, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
What's After Yang about?
After Yang is based on a short story.
Yeah.
Basically, the setup is a little bit complicated, but it's like Colin Farrell and Jodie Turner-Smith are a couple, and they adopt this young girl from China, and they bring it basically to raise the kid. They have like and adjust her culturally to America or wherever they are living. They have this android in the house named Yang, who like cares for and also like relates to kind of her experience. And then basically the setup for the movie is that I think the android malfunctions. And then you kind of see it spin out from there.
Yeah, like the android malfunctions and they can't revive it, and it causes like a crisis
in his family. Yeah,
because they're like they want the android was something that brought like life and perspective to the family. It brought like comfort to them. Yeah, and they lose. You know what I'm now realizing about Kogonada, and it's interesting you bring him up. Like, I realized he actually kind of inspired me in my final semester at AFI. Because I used to think I wasn't a sci-fi guy, and he came in and he had made a sci-fi movie, and he was not a sci-fi person at all, and I realized that I was a sci-fi person. I thought I had thought one thing about sci-fi and what it could be, and he was like, no, this is sci-fi, but it's like sci-fi that I would want to see. Yeah. And so he inspired me, and now I'm like working on a sci-fi script, like, and it made me realize that I could do sci-fi because it's more about like that's movie like After Yang is more like of a conceptual sci-fi, which is like, by the way, like I've now realized like hardcore sci-fi people like that's actually like real sci-fi.
You're saying
not like Star Wars and shit. What?
Well, that's because Star Wars isn't technically sci-fi. It's science fiction fantasy.
So what you say, one, I think that's very interesting that you found him inspiring. I think that's so true, is that his work as a sci-fi filmmaker, what he's tapping into is what happens to human connection, what happens to human emotion. In that way, it's similar to her. I would say visually, the story, it's a bit different. But he finds a way to make, I think, very sensitive, kind of humanistic portraits very compelling on screen. And so between the thread, I think, between After Yang and Pachinko as well, is that he finds a way to tell, what the interior emotional experience of a person is. Yeah. In a way that feels grand and cinematic and beautiful. Yeah. And also, captivating. I think that's hard to do, And so, I think he's such an interesting filmmaker.
I'm not realizing, like, you really, from what I understand of your taste, and you can speak more to this, Andy, but, like, you really love things that are like visually arresting, like that's something you really care about. Like I'm not really talking to you about like West Side. You were talking about like West Side Story, which Gabe and I saw and really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And you were talking about like Andy watches movies and really takes away like visual things. You really do get hung up on visuals and like imagery and all those things. Like you don't just watch things, which is interesting to me.
Do you like the Daniels?
I do like the Daniels. I
From
appreciate
a visual
their work
standpoint?
very much. I mean, obviously, visually, they're so hyper stimulating and kind of excellent in what they do. Very different from what Kogonada does, which I think is almost like visual minimalism in a way. Yeah, it's like creating it's creating these like portraits of paintings, and you're watching people move almost like very slowly throughout them. But I think what works so well, and to speak to that, I just think like for me, it's not about genre or like setup or concept as much. It's the connection and how can you cinematically, portray human emotion or human experience
for sure
on screen. And I think certain filmmakers do that so well. Kogonada to me almost feels like a blend of like making what like Terrence Malick does, almost like graspable in a way. Because what Terrence does is almost like unfathomable. When you watch The Tree of Life, it's like I can't even wrap my hands around that movie.
Yeah.
With Kogonada, it feels a little bit more like okay, I can actually grasp what he's trying to say here, and maybe the fullness of what is like the text actually.
Well, because Terry will literally throw out like I'm thinking of Tree of Life. The visual poetry of Tree of Life is nuts. Like he'll literally show like
Have
a
you
shot.
Watched it? Okay.
They literally show like a shot of just like at the end, like when Sean Penn like leaves the city. There's like this whole arc of like Sean Penn lost his brother. A lot of his family members aren't around, and he's like this miserable guy, but he works as like an architect in, I don't know what it's supposed to be, San Francisco or something.
Yeah, Sean Penn also went on record and gave just one of the funniest takes where he was like, "I'll be honest, I don't know what I was doing for most of that movie." Terry's a genius, but like I'll be honest, like I was just kind of walking around.
But Terry Malick at the end of that movie, there's just like a shot. I think it's just of like the Golden Gate Bridge, and that's the shot, and it's like it's like the completion of the character's arc. Like Sean Penn, that's the completion of Sean Penn's character's arc. Yeah. It's just a shot of a bridge. Yeah. And if you're in tune with the movie, you know what it means.
Yeah.
But it also, like, 90% of people would be like, "What the fuck is?" I remember my dad was like, "What the fuck was that?"
Yeah, I
was like, "Dad, no, it's like I'm trying to explain to him." He's like, "That's nonsense." I was like, "Pops, like, you know what I mean? You gotta like."
Yeah.
But like, you're right. Coconut is a little more like bringing it down to like scale. Almost.
Right, because if you ask, Terry Malick doesn't do interviews, but if I imagine if people were to ask him, what is your movie about? Like, what is To the Wonder about? What is The Tree of Life about? He'd be like, God. That's it.
Right.
And you'd be like, what? Or he'd be like,
very like big.
He would say something like breath. And you'd be like, how do I like, make sense of that? And I think the point is that you can't really make sense of it. It's almost like an awe-inspiring, incomprehensible experience, which maybe life is as well.
Terry, I don't know how Terry gets these movies made. Honestly.
Whoever keeps giving Terry money, keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's worth it for the art.
It's fucking sick.
I don't know how he does.
Yeah, it's nuts. Anyway.
Yeah, we gotta get.
But I just wanted to Andy does have as we're talking. Andy does have a very specific way he watches things.
Yeah, and Colin and I, for also to go back to the competing question, Colin, very clearly was like, I kind of knew from the moment I met him, I was like, oh, this guy's like a filmmaker. For me, I kind of knew early on in school, I was like, nah, I'm not a filmmaker, but I love the form, I love movies and TV, and I love relating to people about them.
Yes.
And in my line of work, like on the representation side of things, it's supporting that, but it's also, finding ways to just be the connective tissue. And so that's where I think I find my own mindset and taste. And,
I love that connective tissue.
And skill set kind of working and, working in partnership with other people.
Yeah.
For Colin and I, it's not like we're competing. It's like, oh, like we're like, supporting and being excited about things together.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, like we would just spend literally be like in the common room at Fidel just like for hours and hours just talking about whatever.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It's crazy. We could go on and on about movies, but
yeah. So do you have any questions for Andy before we get into this fucking thing or what?
Yeah, I guess I do. Andy, working in the business, do you find yourself reading the scripts of the movies that you're going to go see often?
Yeah, sometimes, yes. If I'm fortunate enough, I will get to read the things that will actually be made. I read a lot of things that like stay in development, but the hope is that with everything you read, eventually makes its way to the screen. The Menu is one, which I think is as a transition to this is very interesting because this was a very, very hot script that people loved.
Anyone I've talked with in development, and I've probably made. I've only been here about a year, and I'm surprised at how many people I've met in development. Probably at least 3 or 4 kids our age, working at different places.
Yeah,
and they all read the script.
Yeah, this was like a big. This was a big deal when this came out, and when it came out that Mark Mylod was going to direct it. Off Succession, everyone was trying to put the right talent into it, and it was a very desirable kind of
interesting
project. And so for me on my side of things, a lot of what I'm doing is reading, but everything was with the hopes of seeing it on screen later.
So will you still see a film?
Absolutely.
So if you don't,
you can finish your question also.
If you don't read the script, what's another reason for you to see a film purely from a business standpoint?
From a business
not
standpoint,
for fun, not for you, but
beyond the magic of cinema, I think seeing it from a business standpoint, it's every movie you go on to, every time you walk into a theater, it's a case study in how does this connect with the world and culture at large? Because there's an infinite amount of things taking our time. I mean, we could talk for hours about the amount of content that's out there right now.
Yeah.
But every time I go into a movie theater, I clock who's in the movie theater right now? How close are people sitting next to each other? Is this a bunch of people individually on their own? Are these people in groups going to watch this thing? It's a different gauge when you go and watch. I don't know if either of you watched the A24 movie Lamb from last year.
No.
Very, very kind of like a classic foreign horror A24 movie, very slow moving. When I went to the theater, it was all people on their own, so I was like, oh, it's all cinephiles coming into this because they're kind of aware of what they're going to watch. And it seemed like most people liked it when they came out of. When I went and watched, Glass Onion in theaters last weekend, it was all big groups of people, big families. Because everyone's like, oh, I love this, you love this too.
Right.
Let's all go experience this thing together. And so for the market study, it's okay, how can those movies that are meant maybe for smaller audiences or for individuals to go and sit in a theater and have that experience.
Yeah.
How can that still work? And so for me, I find it. I mean, any movie I go into is almost educational in that sense. And that's why I'll go watch things in theaters. Anytime I can get a chance to.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Fuck yeah. That was a great question, Gabe. I love it. Great answer.
I'm just trying to keep
the
questions coming.
Yeah.
All right. So when you graduated from college,
yes,
and you were trying to find an end to a place within the industry, trying to find your way,
right?
Why connective tissue? Was there ever a moment? Is
Yeah.
there still ever a moment where you miss picking up the art and moving the paint around?
Yeah. I mean, no, that's a good question. I think for me, like writing as a process is like therapeutic to me, but not in the way of where like what I'm writing is for the what I'm writing I want to like visualize and actualize and have the world see. For me, it's more of like a personal expression sort of thing. So I still like enjoy doing that in my free time. But for me, it was always like I think out of college, I knew I was like I want to be on the business side of it because having a love for the art and having also just a fascination with what moves people, what excites you, what scares you, what makes you want to go to a theater rather than watch something at home. For me, that's like it's human behavior, it's psychology. For me, that was what was most fascinating about it. And what I love most about movies and in college, especially with Colin, was just like, okay, like how do you interpret Roma? What do you walk away from that?
Right,
like Colin and I are going to both sit next to each other, cry buckets. Buckets.
That movie was incredible. That was an incredible screening.
I never saw it.
Buckets of tears.
They did like a special screening of Roma. What he's referring to, there's a special screening of Roma on USC campus, and Andy and I were like, gotta go.
Yeah.
And it was wild.
It was magical, in every sense of the word.
And they were also trying a new
Dolby Atmos,
new sound system, the new Dolby shit. This was like one of the shit and USC's theater, which is honestly the movie theater on USC's campus, which was a shit called.
It's incredible. Norris Theater
is one of the best movie theaters I've ever been to ever.
Really?
And it's just on campus where we would take class.
I mean, I'm sure like there's ways to get back in as alumni. And but it's incredible. But what I love so much about that was, and back to the connective tissue point, is we walked out in the movie and like Colin and I both coming from very different personal experiences, neither of which are Alfonso Cuarón's or anyone in that movie, take very different things away from it, but are both like moved to have to talk about it.
Yes.
We have to find a way to like rationalize and process what we just saw.
Yeah.
Yes.
For me as like connective tissue, as a representative, like that's what you do. You find a way to be like, oh, filmmaker and artist has this story to tell that's powerful. It's gonna leave you with something that you're not gonna be able to keep within yourself. You have to share it. You have to process it out to the world. Finding ways to connect that, because I feel like in all the ways that I think all of us in this room feel art is essential. So much of it is just like strategically getting it out to the world in a way to where it'll actually find audiences.
Yeah.
It'll actually find people who can talk about it. With Roma, I'm so grateful that we got to watch it in a theater.
Oh, man.
Because every person I know that we saw it in the theater with that day came out a different person. Like, like changed in some way.
Yes.
And I think it's a very different experience than if you talk to someone who watched Roma at home. Very different take.
Very
often.
different.
Anyway, I hope that answers your question.
For sure.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow, Andy just dropping gems here.
He's coming in.
That's incredible.
For the
I'm getting
basement to
fired
the
up.
attic, baby.
Yeah.
That's it, baby. Yeah, I'm just
I'm
like
getting
trying to keep
fired
these
up
fun
right
questions
now,
coming.
dude.
Yeah, no, those are good questions. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Do you have any? I mean, Gabe keeps also. Any other questions? I mean, you're on fire right now.
I'm just trying to think right now.
This is like Michael Jordan flu game shit right here. It's incredible. Because he was like, dude, I'm really tired. I'm gonna power through. I'm like,
yeah, you're
all right,
you're
motherfucker.
killing it right now.
Yeah, you're killing it.
Oh my
Gabe's been doing a lot of like rehearsing and shit for class,
it.
for acting
Thanks,
class.
buddy.
But anyway,
thanks. So I think let's try another question. Mr. Andy.
Yes.
One of the
Mr. Andy.
Mr. Andy, if you could just give me just a moment of your time.
Yeah. Really close to the mic.
Thank you. So you are you're a grinder, as they would say. Like you push day after day at the desk. Like your job is there. You're a hustler, I guess is more an accurate word, right?
Sure, yeah. I cannot claim that for myself, but I would. Yeah,
you would not claim that for yourself? Claim it. Come on. Take ownership of that shit.
He's a grinder.
He's a grinder. Done. Okay, so on that principle,
yes.
Does working in this industry, do you feel that there is a path you're creating for yourself moving upwards, or do you ever feel like you are just kind of hanging on for the ride?
Interesting question. I feel like that, you can take that in so many ways, especially like from the psychological standpoint.
Just for context and to help you frame it, coming out of school only 4 years ago, you had structure your whole life. Now you don't necessarily have structure. Working in an industry
it's kind of like you pick your path.
That's
right?
the thing, and the industry is constantly evolving, and it's notorious for everything from 16 to 20-hour days, different facets of it, whether it's entertainment or marketing, or there's even like technically educational parts of it as well.
Yeah.
But like for you, trying to mark your own way through there, do you get tired of that grind? Do you see a path? Are you giving yourself permission to just like work as hard and as much as possible?
Yeah,
all the time?
I hear what you're saying too. I feel like I've been blessed to have good, mentors and I think bosses who were, advocated for my own personal like life balance and all that stuff too. So, for me, I feel grateful that at this stage in the industry, I feel like we're moving away from work yourself into the ground and more like work as hard as you can, and also like take time to take care of yourself. Yeah. That's really important. For me, I would say that, you find what you love and this is just the way I feel, you find what you love, the more you try things, the more you do them. And so for me at work, like, as an aspiring representative, what, I kind of aim to do is if there's a way that I can at some point be, like I was saying before, the connective tissue for artists to help change and shape the perspectives that people make about the world, the assumptions people make about other people, about other groups of people, the way people even envision and view their own potential in the world. So much of that comes from media, and, especially, in finding things and landing them in the right places. It's a small role, compared to what like the filmmaker or the artist does. But I think it's important, you know? And so for me, I kind of found is like, okay, like I'm someone who's I'm always people focused, that's always going to be my mindset and drive in life. And so I think for me, like the work and the hours and all that stuff, well, it's hard. It's always rewarding, because, however many months you can go between seeing a good movie in theaters. But, every time I step into a theater and I watch something that's good and I see someone like come away from it having enjoyed it, that to me is like, oh, that's why we do this thing.
Yeah,
we do this so we can impact people in some way.
Yeah.
Maybe for social impact for good reasons, but also just for like, experiential, like this is like expression, this is art, like even with something like Tar, when I watched out of the theater, people had, jaw to the floor, like blown away.
Really?
Some people hated it, some people loved it, but undeniably it left an impact upon people.
Wow.
Yeah.
And for me, I always think about that.
Yeah.
And Colin knows this. Or you might know this. I was a drummer growing up. Like I was like
No, I actually did not know.
Oh, drumming is one of my favorite things in the world. And so for me growing up, I was like I loved like hard rock, like heavy metal drumming.
Yeah.
For me, I was an angsty kid. A lot of people who went into the USC Film School also are. Shout out to my angsty teens. But I spent so much of my teenage years behind a drum set just drumming away.
Yeah.
And for me, I loved it, but I could never see myself actually being someone who lived that life, a drummer out on tour essentially on the road.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful in many ways that I'm not living that life.
Yeah.
But
when
I watched Sound of Metal, what struck me and blew me away so much was that I saw Riz Ahmed, someone from a South Asian background, similar to me, in that role.
Cool.
Not necessarily having anything about the role tied to the fact that he was South Asian, but just absolutely smashing it every scene.
That's a great movie.
Everyone in the movie is smashing it every scene. And so for me to see that and be like, oh, there's someone who's like me, from a background like me, holding his own entirely in the space, as a drummer, as an actor, as a performer, whatever. Yeah. If I can help someone like envision and see that potential in themselves, if I could have seen that movie as a teenager, would have changed the way I saw the world. To be a part of that and to do that for someone else, like that's what I remind myself every day when I go.
I love that. Okay.
Wow.
Cool. All right, so if you didn't know, we use this lovely little timer.
Yes. Please stop me from talking.
No. The timer is not for you.
Okay.
You're doing great.
We got to put Andy on a timer. He's talking a bunch of nonsense. We have to.
Yeah, I'm over here talking about it.
Andy, we're just telling you right now.
We're talking about Terry Malick.
No, he's speaking very articulately.
Every number on the timer is going to be it's going to be a second that we shave that mustache off. So if you break the rules.
Yeah.
You may not have a mustache at the end of this podcast.
Well, he said mustache is coming off soon.
What?
Yeah, you got to find a new incentive. But we'll say for the purposes of the podcast.
I know I keep bringing it up, but I freaking love it. Like, come on.
Yeah. We'll
Dude, I mean,
I'll bite. I'll game here. I'll pretend that this is gonna stay for longer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so real talk.
Yeah.
Camera only runs for like 27 minutes at a time.
Are you
switching?
So we're not. We still got a couple minutes left. I'm gonna ask one more question. Think of this as like opening segment.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask another question that might be able to help us transition.
When I see that 27, I'm gonna go silent. Is that what we're saying?
Roughly.
It's no. You're not gonna go silent because what happens is I get up, turn it off,
Okay.
Turn it back on.
We got to get Andy
but
like
the
a podium
audio
here.
never
Yeah.
stops.
Anything I say after 27 minutes, you didn't hear it.
We'll cut it.
Because you probably listen in the car or something, right?
Oh my God! Of course.
Of course. So, but on YouTube, there's always like a little black moment, opens back up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this, the audio never stops, but
the video sometimes does.
Exactly.
I love it.
So transitional question.
Yes.
Because today we're here because of what film, Colin?
Wait, why am I blanking right now? The menu.
Great. So we're here for the menu.
Yeah.
Before we get into the menu, as a man who works with a lot of people in the industry from different facets, filmmakers, producers, directors, everything in between, what kind of films are hot right now? What kind of scripts are hot? Do you have an opinion? Is it too big of a broad question?
No, it's not. It's not too big of a broad question, I would say, and it goes across genres, I would say. But I would say it's funny that we're talking about this movie because this is one of the few movies I think this month, especially. We're coming into award season. We've seen a Spielberg movie come out. We've seen a James Gray specialty movie come out in Armageddon time. We've seen plenty of things
call
go
it
to
specialty.
streaming.
I haven't heard that before. Specialty movie.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
So by specialty, for a little industry tip, specialty theatrical distribution would be something like when Focus Features releases something, when Searchlight Pictures releases something.
Okay.
So
okay.
technically, Armageddon Time and The Menu kind of on the same territory.
Oh wow.
Would Magnolia Flowers be like a specialty?
That would be an indie distribution.
Yeah,
that'd be a little bit different.
Because he's talking theatrical.
The Searchlight again, it parent company. Think about it. Zoom out. Parent company Disney, Focus, parent company Universal.
Okay.
Like it's still it's not indie.
Interesting.
But all to say, like if you think about both movies in comparison, obviously very very different movies doing very different things to very different audiences. And this is kind of a straight ahead thriller, which is always going to do better in theaters.
Yeah.
This movie has been performing very, very, very well, and
really?
finding audiences. And people have generally audiences and critics for the most part are in large support of this movie.
Wow.
Whereas if you go into if you go into a theater for the Menu opening weekend, likely it'll be for the most part half full or more.
Yeah.
Half full is pretty good these days. So
half full is pretty fucking good.
And if you were to watch another specialty movie technically under the same banner, your chances would be you might be sitting by yourself. Yeah.
Wow.
So
I mean, Armageddon Time when we went to go see it,
it was sparse. But we also went to a small theater. We went to the Century.
I loved Armageddon Time. That was one of my.
I saw that. Yeah, which James Terry's a master. Yeah,
that's my. I like that movie a lot. Anyway,
all to say, yes, I would say that things that generally are straight ahead. So think about something like The Glass Onion, like The Menu.
Do you think Babylon will be hot?
I'm very interested.
It's marketing itself as hot, but
it has.
And I love
two of the biggest movie stars.
Damien Chazelle, one of my favorite directors.
Incredible director. Incredible director.
I feel like we're gonna run over, but I just got so many questions here. Let me swap it out real quick because I still have another question now.
Yeah.
Dale.
Yeah, hold the mic, Dale. Come on, man. What are we doing?
All right, we'll be right back. Movie Addicts Podcast.
Part 2.
And we're back. Okay. Movie Addicts Podcast. I'm the mic
Guru
guy here.
We're mic'd up.
We're mic'd up.
So this brings up. Maybe you can help me with this. So before we get into the menu,
it changes also what people like, but obviously
for sure, ebbs and flows and all that good stuff. Damien Chazelle. We're not going to spend too much time on this because we're going to get into the menu. He's got a new film coming out.
Yes.
You said you're interested to see what happens.
Yes.
For me, First Man came and went because I thought marketing was dog shit. I didn't end up going because I really only wanted to see it in IMAX.
First Man got a bit of an unfair. I think. First Man got a little bit of a.
What is? It was unfair. It was unfair. The movie's incredible. I love that movie.
It's a great movie. Yeah.
What is the difference between First Man and Babylon in terms of why one may or may not be getting more marketing power behind it?
First Man did get a lot of marketing power behind it. It's big $100 million movie, but I think it obviously there was a controversy around the not putting the flag on the moon in the movie. To my knowledge, and what it seems like everyone had said, that was just something that they didn't do like maliciously at all. Like they weren't trying to. It actually just didn't seem like it was essential to the story. And it wasn't even it necessarily might not have been in the script. So because that happened though, I think it kind of created a sour taste in most people's mouths for a movie that otherwise was very good.
Wow.
Where Babylon I think is different.
That's kind of wild.
I would put Babylon
honestly.
I would put Babylon way more in comparison with La La Land, because La La Land is 2 movie stars, big kind of setup, very classic Hollywood, beloved. Story, and crushed it. Obviously, smashed it. Huge success.
Yeah.
In every way, awards, money, everything. It's kind of cemented Damien Chazelle as the one of in the Mount Rushmore filmmakers of this generation, especially over the next 10 years. Babylon will be interesting because it's, again, 2 movie stars. Margot Robbie, Brad Pitt, you couldn't get bigger than that.
Absolutely.
3-hour movie, $100 million budget, which is bigger than La La Land for sure, but I want to say something like $100 million on the budget. Coming out of Christmas in a year that already hasn't been like super favorable box office wise to, like great, critically acclaimed movies. I would say. We see that even like The Fabelmans, coming out and like, that's a Spielberg movie, that's a big deal. He's making a movie about his life. Didn't necessarily get people rushing into the theater over Thanksgiving. So with Babylon, I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays in comparison to something like La La Land. Because for me, at least, it seems like First Man is kind of like a separate, kind of odyssey in Damien Chazelle's career.
Yeah.
At least I see it that way. And he also didn't. I don't think he wrote it, and I know he wrote La La Land, and I think he wrote Babylon too. I'm almost sure that he did. So I think it'll be seen like a little bit differently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Damn. But I'm so excited to watch it. Like, it looks bananas.
I'm really excited.
Dale, you want to hit us with the facts on the menu?
Yeah, man. So we got the menu here. We got directed by Mark Mylod.
Mark Mylod.
Mylod.
Yes.
Sorry. Written by Seth Reese and Will Tracy. Rafe Fiennes. That's how you say it. It's Rafe, right?
It's Rafe Fiennes. Yeah.
Rafe Fiennes. Anya Taylor-Joy, Nicholas Hoult starring. Got some other, like, Hong Chow is in this movie.
John Leguizamo.
Janet McTeer, Paul Adelstein, John Leguizamo.
Yep.
Amy Carrero, Reed Birney.
I like Reed Birney.
Reed Birney.
Rob Yang, who I love.
Great Succession. Arturo Castro for all my Alternatino fans.
He's hilarious.
He's
I love that he's slipping into
really
films.
good. He's really good.
Yeah. Like he's doing what Nick Kroll should have been given the opportunity to do in
Don't Worry, Darling.
Don't Worry, Darling.
Right. He's kind of almost has like I feel like very different, but like almost like Bill Burr. Bill Burr ends up in like Breaking Bad, right?
Yeah.
And he has a completely kind of straight ahead serious role in it, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And like Arturo Castro, obviously very comedic, very funny person. Finds himself in something like The Menu, where he's obviously.
I'm realizing he's in Broad City. That's what I know him
also
from.
in Broad City,
yes.
Also in Narcos.
Yeah,
okay,
that's right.
He's a really fucking good actor.
He is.
I think he's one of the best actors in this movie. Like,
he does
honestly,
crush it. In his
anyway.
role, he does great.
So worldwide, 47,224,732 box office. And
it's
that's
barely been out for what, 2-3 weeks?
So that's 16 days, 2 weeks. Yeah.
And it's made 47. Wow.
Yeah. So
what was the budget again?
Budget was I'm not sure. What?
I believe 30.
Okay. So 30 mil. It's a darkly comedic thriller. Directed by Mark Mylod, right?
Yeah, you got it. Second time.
Mark Mylod, who's directed primarily television, great television, Entourage, Succession, anything else?
Good thing to know about Mark Mylod is like he is like the primary director on Succession. I'd say for like from season 1, McKay directs the pilot, but Mark Mylod does the 2nd, 3rd, 9th, and 10th. And so for every season since then, 2nd season, 3rd season, he'll do the first 2 and the last 2. And so he'll kind of do like set up the story and close it out. Cool. And I don't want to hear any Succession hatred.
No, it's fire. It's fire. It's fire.
What he did at the end of season 3 with those last 2 episodes, especially with an ensemble, I thought was beautiful.
I haven't seen the 3rd season. I've only seen the first 2 seasons of Succession.
Is it HBO?
Maybe that's sad.
Have you watched the 3rd season?
No, I haven't seen anything. I've never watched the show.
I really like Succession.
We gotta just watch the show. Like,
that is a little sacrilegious.
Is the show over yet?
I just did it to him.
There's one season left,
right? No. Season 4 will come out. I'll say it right here.
Go for it.
It's the best show on TV.
Really?
I like Atlanta more. I have to go Atlanta.
Okay,
for
Atlanta also
I am going to put it out there.
Atlanta's
they're very
amazing.
different, though, aren't they?
But he's trying to give it the crown.
I'm trying to give it the belt. And what Colin is saying very fairly is that Atlanta deserves the belt.
I think,
Dale, you like to give the belt.
Half hour versus hour. Let's say Succession's the best hour on TV right now.
I would say undoubtely the best.
Okay.
TV. Especially as a recurring series.
Damn.
Yes.
I really like Barry for the half hour though.
Atlanta.
Have you watched Barry?
Yes, not as much as you have. I've seen like a handful.
All right, so then we can agree to not attack each other.
Okay,
now.
But
both of us are
Atlanta. Andy and I are both aligned on Atlanta though as well. It's a fucking it's genius.
And for people who dipped out on season 3, I think season 4 is just fantastic front to back.
Yeah.
Really?
I love season. Yes.
Season 4 is very character focused, which I think works really well.
Yeah, thank God, because the 3rd season
I love some of the episodes too. Like the one where Skarsgård shows up.
That's a good episode. Yes.
Wait, which Skarsgård?
What I love about, I mean,
Alexander.
We could do a pod in Atlanta. We won't do that, but I'm saying that is such a rich text. If you think about that, you know that episode with Alfred. We can get into this later. The Alfred episode, the ninth one of 4th season. Yes. He's just on the farm alone by himself.
Yes, incredible.
That entire basis of that episode is based off like a classic American 19th century painting.
Wild. Okay.
It's called Andrew Wynath, Alfred's World, right? And is the name of the episode.
Yeah.
That is based off a painting by the painter Andrew Wynath called I'm gonna forget the woman's name, but Claudia's World, something like that.
Okay.
And it's if you look at them side by side, it's just
that's nuts.
Wow.
Geniuses.
Wow.
We gotta give credit where credit's due.
Yeah. I mean,
Barry, Atlanta,
wow. Okay. Wow.
Dun.
Anyway,
back to Mark Malone.
All right, back to Mark Malone.
Okay.
We got the menu. Where do we want to start this discussion on the menu? I mean, it's...
Well, we have to keep time and context. What time we got on the top right now?
We got 5:36.
Great. So we got a little less than an hour to burn.
Yeah, to get through.
Make some
so
progress.
We gotta,
Okay. Well, I think we could just start with like the truth of.
I'm
what
on the edge of my
plot?
goddamn seat here.
No, let's keep it simple as fuck. What happened with the plot? Did we like what the story was? What the story was trying to tell?
Colin's coming off the freshest viewing out of all of us here.
Yeah,
I mean, so.
Yeah.
You probably have the plot down.
Did I like? I don't know.
Let's take a step back. Let's.
I don't know.
All right.
Let's step back.
Let's set the.
You know me. Plot's one of my least favorite things.
I was about to shift to character. I was going to say, do you have a favorite character? Plot's one of my least favorite things.
I think there are some really fucking great characters in this. I think Nicholas Holt's character is the best. I also love I don't know. I forget the actress's name, but the food critic.
Yeah,
great fucking character. I'm forgetting also. The guy whose finger gets chopped off. Great character.
Reed Birney.
Yeah.
And also the detail that gets revealed about him, how he.
Yeah, is related.
Was with Anya. I gotta
Margot.
He was with Margot because she's an escort.
Aaron, technically.
And then also there's a suggestion that he molested his daughter or something, right?
Oh, I forgot.
Something very grim.
Nefarious. Yeah.
Because they've discussed. There's a little tidbit. I don't know if you guys remember this. They're sitting at the table, that couple, and they mention Claire, who's their daughter, and you think Claire's dead, but now I'm realizing that's not. It's not that Claire's dead. It's Claire's estranged because dad was a molester. So, and the way that was revealed was really interesting. I think this movie is really, really ambitious. It's trying to close a lot of loops in an hour and 50 minutes. I was sort of shocked that was the runtime.
I'm going to go on a limb and say I think it's trying to close loops that they never opened also.
Sure, maybe. Interesting. Elaborate on that.
I just feel like they pay off on certain things that, for instance, The Mess.
Yeah.
We are welcome to the Spoilers podcast, right?
Yeah.
The Mess, when I forget the character's name, but the chef, takes a bullet.
Chef Slowick.
Yes. Okay. So
Chef.
Just
call him Chef.
You're talking about the suicide scene.
Yes.
The sous chef.
So it's not
the
Chef Slovic.
The sous chef.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, who the fuck is that? Dude, there's so many goddamn characters.
Right there. Jeremy.
Okay, Jeremy.
Yeah,
sous chef Jeremy.
Jeremy puts a bullet in his own head. And that just felt like, again, missed opportunity. They could have had so much more setup in the first 35 minutes of the film before he goes. Because you were talking about we don't hear, before the podcast, we were talking about how we didn't get as much perspective from we'll say the restaurant's employees as we could have.
Well, I want Andy to fill in the thing you said about the Bob Altman movie and the parallel there.
Okay.
Because that's what he was. It's related to, but it's related to what you're saying is related to what Andy was saying.
So for me,
earlier.
in my opinion, it's you just gave us a big juicy moment to shock the characters in the film who don't realize why they're there, to shock the audience, to let them know that the stakes are actually through the roof. This isn't just a bunch of imbeciles having dinner. But that shocking moment that sometimes feels like it's kind of just for shock value could have been a payoff on something huge, and it wasn't.
I think that moment though definitely opened up. First of all, opened up a big visual shift in the movie. The directing became much more erratic, maybe. It's intentionally erratic, it felt like, after that moment. Because everything was very composed, sort of like the movement from table to table was very methodical. Everything was very like smooth up until that point, and that was like a huge shift, obviously, in the story, and like it's reflected stylistically, that shift. I think it's just I have a like I wonder, I guess, what that moment is trying to say. So so it's this guy, you know, Chef Slowik is Slovic.
I'm assuming it's
Slovic.
Slowick.
Oh, it is with a W?
Slowick, yeah.
Slowick.
W.
He's interrogating Jeremy, like, and what does he ask? He asks him, "Do you want my life?"
Yeah.
And there's another question he asks him.
Are you, he said, are you going to ever be a chef like me, or something like that?
And he's asking him, like, are you satisfied with your life?
Yeah.
And the answer to the guy's question, to answer that question, is no, chef. Because I'm trying to please, no, chef. That's chef to you.
Yeah.
No, chef, because I'm trying to please all these people who are impossible to please. They're impossible to satisfy.
Yeah.
And that is like a mission statement, it felt like, of this movie, is like trying to please people who are impossible to satisfy. And it felt
with art in
a
way. Yeah.
Yes.
With expression and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's like, and so I wonder what the movie, what do you guys feel like, what service did the movie do to that thesis statement? Like, because that felt like the big one in this movie was this, and it came up multiple times at different sequences, was this idea of like trying painstakingly to please people who are impossible to please.
Yeah, and
like,
you also don't even have, and what do you think you see in the last, like the third act of the movie is that Ray Fiennes is fully aware. He's like, they can't even appreciate what I'm giving them.
Yes.
Because they're not even paying attention.
Yes.
And two, they just don't have the palate or context or knowledge to like actually appreciate great food. In the same way that if he were to give something that he had made or came up with to someone on his chef staff, they would be able to be like, oh, I see what you did with, I think he makes tacos at one point. Like, I see what you did with this like rendition of this dish.
Yes.
Whereas the people in the restaurant are like, I don't even care. Like the three, finance bros essentially are just like, they're just there for kind of like laughs. The older rich couple is just there because they're like, oh, we just do this because we're rich, and it's something we can do that seems like elitist. And Nick Holt is there because he's the only person there who goes in and like understands maybe the food. Obviously, we see the dark side of that in the sense that he can't cook for his life at the end of the movie. But it's like we're trying to please these people who don't even. And I feel like Atlanta is such an interesting thing to put this in comparison with.
Yeah. Because
Donald Glover has gone on record and been like, I'm giving you like Wagyu beef with the show, and you're talking to me like I'm not. You're talking to me like your cheeseburger.
Comparing
is bad.
it to Dave.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, and he's like, you're talking to me like this, like your cheeseburger is not cooked enough.
Right.
You're talking about something completely different. Like when he talks to Anya Taylor-Joy at one point, or Anya Taylor-Joy, and he says, like, I don't want you to eat tonight. Like, no one is going to eat tonight. I want you to dine, or I want you to like experience, or something like that.
Yeah.
They can't do that because they just don't have it. Like, it's in the same way of like trying to, a great auteur filmmaker, a great composer, someone like that, trying to give this like, trying to give just like someone who doesn't care or isn't interested in what they're actually trying to artistically say, their product.
Yes.
And then like, Ray Fiennes at the end of the movie is just like, my only like stab back at them is, to be like, you don't understand my food.
Yes.
Watch me make you into a meal and kill all of us.
Yes.
Wow.
This is the way I kind of took it.
No, I think that's a very articulately, and I agree. I think it's interesting because the movie is trying to attack that concept and that theme through a class lens.
Yes.
And I wonder if in reality is that issue, like that issue in reality, is it really as rooted in class as the movie is trying to say it is? That's what I'm wondering. You know what I mean? Like, the movie's trying to suggest, I think what Andy's describing, which is a great way to describe what the movie is getting at, I don't know if that's as confined to class.
Yeah, because the class stuff is almost its own critique, separately from the kind of critique upon what like a master artist is. Which honestly, I don't think fully converge in the movie.
Yes.
I would say.
I think what the movie... I'm
I'm gonna give again, we're not trying to be decisive about any of these things. A lot of this is just like our own interpretations and stuff. One big thing that I walked away from the film is not so much that Chef had a pretense that was undermined by people's like flippant, vapid desire for consumption. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, I really felt like he fell into a spiral. Like, my heart actually kind of went out to him as a character because like the cheeseburger was like the revelation that this guy started out with the joy of serving others. Mm-hmm. Like, for me watching it, the film wasn't about the art. The art was a texture. The art was a facet or an angle at which we can view what he does. But ultimately, he saw himself, are you with them or are you with me? I am not a taker, I am a server. I'm serving these people. And I think that's kind of what freaked me out was, how sad is it that this man is giving everything he has. And people just, they will never appreciate it for like what it is. And on top of that, but not so much appreciate the art, but I guess the act of service. Yeah,
and that gets lost. I mean, for him, it's like he's lost that. He's obviously lost the spark, but
the joy.
He's lost that joy in just what is like simple service of like, I'm making you a meal because you're hungry. It's going to be good because I'm putting my love, my care, my thought into it.
Which that's one thing I did love about the end film is that I think he had the realization that it's not just the world's fault. He partook in his own downfall. Yeah. He himself stopped serving people who appreciated what he was doing.
Yeah, right. Because what he's seeking, what you realize at the end, I'm not putting this together.
He just wants validation.
Well, he wants people to enjoy what he's giving them. Yeah. And the entire movie, up until the cheeseburger thing, no one enjoys a goddamn thing.
They're just criticizing.
Yeah. Except Nick Holt, who's like trying to at least be like, oh, I like what you're doing here, but he doesn't really get it. Like, he's not enjoying the food.
Yes. Yeah, like I really find that character to be kind of a beast. Of a character, Nick Holt's
character. He's a fascinating perspective.
A beast in the sense that, like, it's a lot to, like, tackle there. Like, you could do an entire movie about that character.
He plays Beast in X-Men as well.
Okay. All right, well, there you go.
That's cool.
But, like,
I think
you know what I mean? He's a beast. There's a lot going on there, and I thought Nick Holt played it really well.
When we were reading through the Robert McKee book story? We were kind of flipping through it. I think Nick Holt is a good example of, like, the contrary or the negation of the negation.
Explain this. This is some...
If I can break this down helpful enough.
Give it to us.
Oftentimes, like, from Robert McKee's standpoint in building a screenplay or a story in general, beyond screenplay in any medium, he'll talk about like a central theme. And the theme you can often identify as like, it could be as simple as like, there is justice in the world and I will pursue it till my dying breath, And from there you'll take justice and he'll put it into a matrix. And the opposite of justice is injustice. And then there's two other parts in a 2x2 matrix. Think like high school with the DNA and like plants and I forget whatever that was from like 19th century stuff. Am I going crazy here? Does anybody remember this at all?
Wait, what?
It's the plant when like you are breeding plants.
Punnett squares.
Thank you.
Is that what we're talking about?
That's what we're talking about.
We could be going wildly off.
We're going hard, baby. Going hard.
Okay, all right.
That's exactly it. So, but the idea is that in this 2x2 matrix, you've got the justice, you've got the injustice, which is the opposite, and then from there, there's like other versions. There's the contrary, and there's the negation of the negation. So in this case, the opposite of the negation of the negation, injustice, would be somebody who believes they're pursuing justice, but they're not. But they believe they are. And so to bring it back to Nick Holt's character, I think he's such an important perspective because he is the very person that seems the most pure in pursuing what the chef wants. But because we also know that the reason for him being so informed and educated and enthused about this topic is because of like some weird's not quite the right word. I don't want to be like unfair to the character. But there is something very self-serving in it, whether or not he's willing to admit it. He says at the beginning of the film, he gives a beautiful monologue. He says how this inspires like death and life, and this what Chef does is art. And he comes off as such a grateful, such a earnest character, and by the end of it we find out that he too is commodifying what Chef is doing, in spite of him being the most knowledgeable and the most grateful.
And he's actually the person that the chef despises the most.
Right? Exactly.
Unlike the food critic, at least, who, he feels like he's had this back and forth with over the years, he's like, Nick Holt's character offers nothing back to the world in terms of offer nothing, especially to the world of food.
Yeah.
All Great he does point. Is he's the definition of a taker. The food critic at least highlights and puts words to and describes and critiques and celebrates what might be, great food or great, restauranting, if that's even a word.
Yeah.
Nick Holt's character, all he does is take. He's just like, oh, I want to take pictures of this so I can have it for myself. You know? And the chef is like, you're selfish. You actually don't offer anything back to the art. You don't offer anything back to the community. I despise you. Come up here and try to make something. You can't. If he brought up anyone else, probably for the most part, they'd be able to make something. That guy completely crumbles because he realizes in that moment, he's like, I have nothing. I have nothing within me that generates any sort of creativity. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't exactly pin down, and also Chef Slowick says to him, what does he say? Your existence is the death of my art, or something like that. What was that?
What's wrong with that? Something like that.
Yeah.
Something really fucking heavy, and I was like, holy shit.
Because to me, it's almost like, and I guess we're leaning maybe a little bit too much into the artist critique, but it's like, it gives almost a moment for the artist and the consumer to interact, because to me it's like someone making a masterful or a very well thought out, hardly worked over, blood, sweat, and tears into an album or a movie or something.
Yeah.
And then kids online are just trash.
Trash bins.
Garbage.
Right.
Junk.
Right.
And he's like, do you know how much I put into this? Do you understand that? Or kids just being flippant with it. He's like, I want you to hold this thing delicately that I made.
I think I'm just gonna come back to I don't want to repeat myself, but I'm gonna come back to the thing I said again, which is my I would say my main challenge to this movie is I'm so on board with that theme or exploring that idea, and I think the movie does some service to that idea. But I really do wonder if that idea is as class specific as the movie is trying to make it out to be. I just don't know that it is. I think this guy. So the suggestion is that Nick Holt's character, has a lot of money, right? For whatever reason, right? I guess he has money, right? Hence why he's able to be there and pay for another person to be there.
Yeah, we could probably assume that he's an heir of something. If he is a definition taker, he's not running a business. He's not employing people. He's just got a shit ton of dough.
So, that character doesn't have to be a wealthy person to me. That character could be any class to me. The idea of I think that character could be broadly applied across socioeconomic classes. That's just my perspective on it. And so I do wonder if this sort of you sort of mentioned this, Andy, this sort of Adam McKay thing, and Adam McKay's a producer on this thing, right? This sort of Adam McKay thing that infiltrates this movie, I just don't know if it is meant to be as grafted onto this movie the way it is. That's just my big challenge to this thing.
And I really want to dive into the class kind of critique or class kind of exploration that's going on here. Before we do that, though, I just have a question for both of you, and I feel like this is a cultural trend we see.
Okay.
There is kind of a prevalence, and we eat it up, we love it, but the artist antagonizing the audience. So in the case of Chef Slowick here,
I love this. Yes,
he's so fed up with it. He's like, you don't understand what I'm giving to you. You don't know how much I'm pouring myself into this. You don't understand how much of a master of this I am. And in many ways, he is amazing, but we can't actually tell, how much is his staff doing. Someone taking the kind of auteur, mantle. We see a lot of artists do this, and people who are not like Chef Slowick at all. A person who comes to mind is Bo Burnham. A lot of what Bo Burnham does in his comedy kind of post 2015, when he becomes kind of hyper aware and very anxious about kind of what the internet, what social media, what reactionary culture is doing to people, is he just flips it. He starts to antagonize. He starts to tell his audience, he's like, don't you understand? You're laughing at all of my suffering. You're laughing at all of my pain to create something. He's like, I'm almost, as he would say, killing myself to make you laugh, because all I have is like this art form and this expression.
Yeah.
And he's on stage and he's like, this isn't funny, but obviously it's played for comedy. It's very like meta. And you see that with his Netflix. I'm sure both of you seen Inside.
Yeah,
I've seen a little bit of it, not the full thing.
A lot of what it is about like reactionary culture. But what he comes away with, he's like, I can't even bear to like look at these people in the eye. Like I have to like, I'm doing this from my home right now, and he's like, I'm ashamed and disgusted with myself, and I'm like putting this like performance on display, and my performance is no longer, haha, I'm dancing, singing songs, making me laugh. Let's all enjoy this together. His comedy now is kind of more from the lens of like I'm draining and wasting every resource I have to give you something that you won't appreciate ultimately. You know, which I'm interested to hear both of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and
in terms of like, what do you think about?
And we're gonna get into it. We'll be right back. Maybe next podcast. Yeah, sorry, Andy. That was a great. All right, we're back. What? 5:55. So we got like, we'll call it 35 minutes. Great.
All to say,
so I love this. I love
back
the
to that.
I want to go into this.
To ask you both, kind of like, what do you think about that? As like, and I think with Bo Burnham, it's so interesting because obviously he's very incredibly gifted, like prodigiously talented. And in a way, it connects to what Chef Slowik is doing in this movie, where he's like, I have nothing left to give you guys. I've given you the most creative, most elaborate, most refined experience of dining that I can.
Yes.
And it's not you don't even care, like you can't appreciate it.
To the extent that it's like, I think the script does a great job of taking it to the furthest extent possible, right? So to the most extreme, like his efforts are so as extreme as possible. It's literally on this remote island. You have to take a boat to get there. They have all the livestock there. They have to, smoke the meats for 152 days or whatever the fuck.
So
like they're growing all their own shit. They're like doing all sorts of, they're gelling and whatever, that whole like moment in the movie. But like the movie does. I want to put a pin in your question. It's like you're asking like what do we think about the artist, the creators of the film, the storytellers, whatever, antagonizing the audience.
And I'm not saying I'm not on board with that. I think it makes for very compelling art, but I just think it's an interesting trend that we see where we see this even with people not wanting necessarily reaction to it because they're like, you can't appreciate it. I think it's kind of someone like Donald Glover does this. Yeah. Kevin Durant does this with basketball. He says, very separately, but he says like, I don't know why, like I don't want to talk to the media. Like you guys don't know you don't know all the years, the blood, sweat, and tears I put into this.
Yes.
You try to like critique my, my post game, but you don't know like what it takes,
Yes.
And so I don't know. I'm curious to hear about as artists too, is your points of view.
I think the antagonistic. I was like literally talking with my girlfriend about this on the phone after I got out of the movie.
Go on.
Which was. The antagonistic nature of this movie feels a little bit faux to me. It feels like faux antagonism, and I'll say why.
Really?
My mom, for example, this is a weird example. My mom loves Criminal Minds. People love true crime. I'm going to actually skip over my mother.
My mom loves Criminal Minds.
Okay, interesting. But people love true crime. For example, my mom and my brother love true crime, and I hate true crime. I hate it.
Okay, go on.
I think it's just awful. Because it's just real people and horrible things happening. I can't stand it. And I don't know what to get out of it. I think people watch true crime because they go, well, at least my life's not like that. At least I'm not a serial killer. At least I'm not Ted Bundy. At least I'm not Jeff Dahmer, etc.
Or one of the victims, for that matter.
Okay, sure, right? That's, to me, is part of the psychological appeal of true crime. And I think when you make a movie when you tell a story like this, and the themes and the characters become class-specific, and they become... You paint the characters as people you probably wouldn't know unless you're part of that strata of society, then it doesn't really feel antagonistic. It feels like antagonistic, but in like a third-party way, where it's like you're enough degrees removed from these kinds of people that you don't feel like the movie's antagonizing you. It's antagonizing those people.
I honestly did.
And it's like, oh, it doesn't exist here. It exists out there. Which is why it doesn't feel that antagonistic to me. It feels like faux abrasive material a little bit, where it's like you can always separate yourself. I don't know any people that are like these people. I don't know. I don't know them.
Generally, to most people, it's very agreeable, kind of, in the sense of like, oh, like not the burning down the restaurant and killing everyone, but it's agreeable that it's fair for Chef Slowik to turn it on these people who can't these people who are just essentially like wasters of resources.
Yes. I think so. So do you get what I'm saying? So
I just don't
the antagonism doesn't feel that razor sharp to me for that reason, because most audience members are going to be like, well, I'm not like that. I'm not that thing. So you know what I mean? Yeah. They're gonna have that. They're gonna have the true crime degrees of separation where they go, nah, but I'm not capable of that, or that's not gonna happen to me, or whatever.
I admittedly never saw the film as antagonistic.
Oh, interesting. I didn't either. That's what I guess I'm trying to say. I recognize that it was trying to be antagonistic, but I didn't feel antagonized.
But see, I'll even go a step further and say I don't know if it is trying to be antagonistic.
Yeah.
Like, to insinuate it's faux antagonism is to say in nature it is antagonism. For me, again, I have not read the script. I don't know what the logline is. I don't know the director's modus operandi.
Mm-hmm.
When I walked in that film, what I thought it was is a part of this trend, as per Adam McKay, as per Triangle of Sadness, I would call it class revenge porn, or whatever you want to call it, where it's like...
Triangle of Sadness was another entry in this subgenre.
It's basically, let's have a good time. Let's have a good time getting back at rich people.
Yeah.
And so, in my opinion, I don't think that's... what was the word we were using? Antagonistic. I don't think a mirror or a light is being shined on me in the way that maybe Barbarian was antagonistic. I think I was actually being invited into an arena to look at people.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
I don't know. What is your answer to your own question?
So I actually agree with you both in the sense that I think this movie, for the most part, and that's why I think look, I'll lay my cards on the table, and I think this movie is the way I interpret it. This is a straight ahead kind of thriller.
Yes.
It's a straight ahead kind of ride. From beginning to end, you kind of know at the beginning you're gonna get you kind of get a hint at the beginning. You're like, okay, this is gonna go down, and most people are gonna die.
Yeah.
It takes you to that point. It gives you kind of all the different side characters' moments and everything. I think it does a good job of bouncing back and forth between everyone. At least the attendees of the restaurant, not so much the staff.
Yeah.
But for me, it also definitely felt like one where it's communal. It's like, okay, let's join together and watch this. We're going to watch all these rich people get brought together into this one setting, and we're going to watch their ethos, their livelihoods, their families, their flaws, tear them apart.
Yes.
And for me, I feel like that's in some ways what makes something like Succession so watchable.
Yes.
Is that it's a very different kind of setup and structure and series, but what makes the show so watchable is that it's communal. It's we're all joining to watch this thing, which has generally been kept away from everyone else.
Yes.
Which is the experience of the most elite people in the world. And we're going to watch it and also, be able to poke and critique at the ridiculous nature of some of it. So to me, I also agree that it invites the viewer in. And that's why I feel like the biting nature of it, to me, doesn't hammer it home as much.
No.
And I think this does I think it's not a perfect comparison, but with Don't Look Up too, it's kind of okay, this is what would happen if the world were to, if truly climate collapse were to happen tomorrow. And for me, it's okay, yes, I think all of us are oh yeah, this makes sense. This is the way these people would behave. It's also a kind of an absurd comedy. And this one, it's a black comedy, a thriller, but it's this is the way these people would behave. I think for the most part, we're all yeah, that seems right.
Yeah.
And it kind of just leaves us at that.
Yeah.
So it's oh, that seems right. At one point there's, he mentions, I think John Leguizamo's assistant who's there is talking about getting promoted, and she's oh, but can I go? And she's do you have student loans? And I think she's no. And then she's you die too. And so I think for, the critique is almost it's kind of getting the audience to almost cheer. It's yes. Finally, we're, the tables are being flipped. So for me, it feels more, and I think that's why it's also done so well in theaters, and it's doing so well with audiences, is that it is very much communal. I think the antagonistic part of it, I find an interesting cultural trend, but I agree with you.
I'm totally with you there.
Which it's a great question from Andy, though. I love that.
For sure.
I love to let it rip. So
that was killer, man.
I had a question for you both before we get into. I guess we continue.
Keep it coming.
I'm a huge ATJ fan. I think Anya Taylor-Joy is magnetic. I think she's fantastic in everything she's been in.
Okay.
I think, and let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about this. I think this movie only really, really works if her dynamic with Ralph Fiennes feels believable. And I think that those two are such good performers that it ends up working. I would say the movie doesn't work if you don't think that these two people could actually interact in a way that, you know, feels compelling or authentic or comedic or even scary. I think because you have people who are obviously Ralph Fiennes, one of the GOATs, like incredible.
Goated.
Everyone go watch A Bigger Splash, you know, go watch Hail Caesar, you know,
legend.
He just comes in off the bench
Schindler's List.
Just smashes it. Schindler's List, he's
Harry Potter.
Voldemort.
He's Voldemort.
Incredible. English Patient. Constant Gardener. Whatever. You can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
This guy just smashes it in every movie he's in. ATJ steps up to the plate and is like hitting the ball right back to him.
Yes.
And to me, I think the movie kind of hinges on those two performers. I would say everyone else, for the most part, feels ancillary. Even Nick Holt's character, I was like, I don't know that, like, he's giving a performance that I think is good, but I think everything hinges on the two of them and their interactions working. And I would say the movie does a good enough job of, like, nailing that.
I want to point out from a perspective after watching the film, I think it's easy to say that because of how good their performances were.
Right.
But because you read the script before, I'm willing to ask, if not challenge you, that, like, was it obvious in the script that those two characters were going to be the glue that held the film together?
I think I would say definitely, like, those two would be billed as the leads of the movie, which is an ensemble movie. Those two would definitely be billed as the leads of it, and I think, like, those two.
It was well cast then.
Very, very well cast. Whoever cast, I don't know who cast this movie, but they did.
I think it's not even like Ralph Fiennes is an obvious choice for this. I don't think. Not that do you really read it on paper and immediately go, this is.
I mean, you could take this in a direction of like they could have put like Mark Rylance in this, and he could have done
sure.
He could have done like a Bones and All, Don't Look Up thing. Where I think Mark Rylance is also an amazing actor. But he like, I think him in this character would be a little bit more like bananas, like what is going on,
I don't want
unbelievable.
That at all.
And Ralph Fiennes is someone who you feel like you can kind of see the humanity in him, even though he has kind of like a very, like, you know, tight exterior.
Yeah.
I
think that the scene that makes me agree with you, Andy, about the ATJ Ralph Fiennes
bathroom scene
pairing.
Bathroom scene?
No, not the bathroom scene. Actually, it was the final scene. It was the cheeseburger thing. You know, I think there was something about that, to the extent that their chemistry was so electric that I almost thought it was like they were all of a sudden like father and daughter in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like it was that I was like, are they about to reveal that this is her dad or something? Which thank God they didn't, because that would have been a very hacky thing to do, writing wise.
They're much smarter than that.
But like they're better writers than that.
To
but
your
like
credit,
but
it does reveal.
It felt like, wow, there's really something exists now between these two people. That was where like if that scene hadn't existed, I don't know if I'd agree with Andy, but that scene caps off the whole. And you can tell, and what you realize once you see a scene like that, you realize that really smart actors like ATJ and Ralph Fiennes are building the performance to lead to that. You know, to lead to that moment and it feeling that way.
Yes.
You have to deny the audience of a number of things before you get to that final moment and it feeling that way. But anyway, you were going to throw something out there.
I was just going to say, like, what was the big question, as mentioned earlier, that he asked her?
I can't remember.
It's, are you with us or are you with them?
Yes.
And so that is the question throughout the film that the audience is paying attention to. Who is she with? And that scene reveals.
Yes.
She never actually makes the decision. She never makes the choice. She runs out of time. He makes a decision for her, and then she stands up and chooses to demand a better meal. And with that, like, that's like the most beautiful, obvious example of subtext, which is kind of, you know, ironic subtext, irony, you know, beautiful, obvious. Welcome to the We Just Called 911 podcast.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
People come into
But no, I think that's why the moment worked so well for you, is because you got the answer that was posed at the beginning of the film.
Yes.
And they really made it clear.
Like, and also I also love like her. The scene where she's poking around in his office is there's so much going on in that scene, and then like I don't know why it felt special, because it's like not like it hasn't been done in a movie before, but like she sees the photo of him cooking the cheeseburgers and he has like a huge smile on his face. I'm also thinking to myself, production design wise, I'm like, how did we get this photo of Rafe? Did we hire an actor to take the photo and shoot it black and white? Anyway, I was thinking very like brass tacks, like how did they get this done? Is that an actual picture of Rafe? Did he actually work at a hamburger restaurant at one point, or are they like? Is it Photoshop? Anyway, that was me.
Talk about visual exposition at its finest.
I know, and it works. It felt like elevated, even though that's a very classic setup payoff movie technique is you see something in a photo and later it comes back as being an important thing that you saw. But for some reason, and I can't put my finger on it, maybe you guys have thoughts on that. For some reason, it felt elevated. It felt like even better than just a kind of a standard setup payoff. And I don't know exactly why that is. Yeah. I think it might be because of how long they wait to show you that.
Yeah.
Because in another movie, that scene would be like 10 pages in, right?
Yeah.
The scene where she's poking around his office and trying to figure out stuff about him. What's going on here? That scene would be literally 10 pages in, and then they pay it off on page 90.
Yeah.
And then, like, that's not what they did at all. That shit comes in super late. You're almost in, like, the third act, and then they pay it off in the third. You know what I mean? So it's like almost like a weirdly arranged.
I think they're doing their best to really force the audience to decide: is this guy nuts or is he just hurt?
I
think the movie thinks and I would say that the movie thinks he's both. Like, it thinks he's one, like, beyond his own. He's reached, like, beyond, like, acceptable levels of ego.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, oh, he's been broken by this, by having lost his, like, love for this thing.
What I'm now realizing is this is really great writing. The reason he gets so mad at the actor guy for being doing the stupid movie. What is it? Dr. Sunshine?
Calling Dr. something. Sunshine,
I think it's Dr. Sunshine. Yeah. And he's like, that movie, he's like, I watched that movie my fucking day off, and it was fucking awful. What a waste of time. You're such a hack. Now I'm realizing the reason he says that to him, and the reason he says it with such vitriol, is because that's the way he feels about himself.
Yeah, and
he feels like, I'm a hack. I lost my purpose. He says that's what happens when an artist loses their purpose.
And what I love about
anyway, sorry.
What I love about that moment too is then when the co-star guy, who's also an actor, kind of comes in.
Yeah.
And I think the movie flips it because then it turns out he's like kind of in on everything too.
Yes.
Yeah, that was sick.
But he comes in and he's like, oh, you're in Calling Dr. Sunshine. He's like, I love that.
Yes.
And I think what the movie is saying is that different. I mean, we can take it as we will, but I think what the movie is saying is there's nothing wrong with appreciating a cheeseburger. There's nothing wrong with wanting that.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with wanting Calling Dr. Sunshine.
Yes.
It's just different for different people, and they're different things, and understanding the difference between, his first 5 courses and the cheeseburger is important to him.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that, like, the consumer's desire necessarily, especially coming from a pure place of just hunger and wanting something to eat, is or wanting something to watch, wanting something to read, is like in some ways to be scoffed at, in the same way like reading an airplane novel, or watching Criminal Minds or NCIS, or listening to Katy Perry, listening to Katy Perry or something like that.
Damn.
I mean,
that's a friend of the show too. Now,
yeah, Katie's coming on.
Sponsored by Katy
Katie's coming on for the Babylon episode.
Yeah, she's slated for a couple weeks. Damn.
Anyway, but
I think we'll smooth that over. We'll
figure it out.
Sorry,
Andy,
go on.
I think what he's saying is, or what the movie is saying, is just that those things aren't necessarily bad. And I feel like like his happiest moment was when he was making the cheeseburger. His happiest moment was when he was, in some ways.
I think it's also the movie's trying to say like it's more about the substance. It's more about the thing having a soul to it, right? What matters doesn't matter that it could have been anything. 1,000%. It could have been chicken parmesan that he makes her at the fucking end. Nah, that's not true. I take that back.
It had to be.
It had to be a cheeseburger. It had to be a cheeseburger.
Colin and I eat a lot of chicken parmesan.
Oh, Jesus. We used to at the Fidel house, the chicken parmesan. Oh man.
Yeah.
And the way it would sit in your stomach. That anyway. But anyway. But what was I gonna fucking? I was about to say something. Brilliant.
It's not about the cheeseburger or the chicken parm.
It's about the fact that he actually enjoyed preparing it. That's what fucking matters.
I liked how childlike he looked during those scenes.
Mm-hmm. Like, that's what it's about, the substance going into, or the substance behind the process of making the thing. It doesn't, it's not like, the movie's not placing a value judgment on cheeseburger. Like, it's not placing a value judgment on high culture or low culture or whatever the fuck, right? Like, I also think it's like, anyway. I was like about to go on a rambling, which I don't want to do.
Yeah.
I had a question I wanted you guys to break apart. We're going to start moving into winding down land. So,
cool. Right.
Zooming out a little bit, a big picture. As soon as the film ended and credits rolled, one thing occurred to me immediately, and I'm curious if you guys felt this way. In the same way that the chef is pursuing art to please his guests, is there an element that the director is also... This is where the antagonism would come in my opinion. Is it in the same way that moviegoers would criticize this film in a way that commodifies the film. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the reason why I'd even go down this rabbit hole is because there were times during the film that I was watching it that I felt the direction was almost like purposely artful, almost to the degree of pretense, because it was trying to make a point within the, like, it didn't have to be directed that way. Like, I haven't read the script, but it checks out to me, perhaps, that, like, the opening moments and many moments throughout the film when there's, like, strings in the background and it feels kind of hoity-toity at times, it didn't have to be, like, that didn't have to be the scoring. But it felt like the film was wrapped in a bow of pretense and artful choice that the audience would have to watch and choose to rip it apart to shreds with no meaning and, you know, in the comment sections, this is trash. Or not.
Yeah. Well, I think to that point too, like
a meta thought.
I feel like everyone involved in this movie, you know, cares about the quality of craft. Like, I think that's, like, pretty undeniable from watching it. They care about the quality of what you're getting.
Yes.
Whereas, you know, when it comes to, like, you're right. It didn't have to be directed like this, but you know, on the way here, I was listening to an interview with Mark Malloy where he was talking about he watched, like, every episode of Chef's Table. Him and his DP. They watched every episode of it just so they could nail the visual style, because I think to them, satire isn't takedown. It's more just, like, flipping the lens with which you look at something. But it doesn't have to be dismantling something. They're like, we do want to do it justice. Like, we want to make sure that when we are capturing these scenes in the kitchen, and they brought in, you know, this famous chef, Dominique Crenn, who has an episode on Chef's Table, which is a great episode, to kind of, like, come in and fact check and see all those scenes and be like, does this look authentic?
Yeah.
Is this actually what, like, a restaurant at this level would look like?
Yeah.
They care about the craft, because I don't think they're wanting it to just be, like, sloppy, like, this is whack, or this is just like a fancy restaurant, we're gonna, like, tear it apart. I think they want to, like, add more nuance to it, and I think that's why I think it's because they care about it, and they care about the art, and they care about, you know, the quality of what you're getting, that this doesn't have to be directed like this. But I think in a movie where so much of it is about quality, experience, criticism, reception, all that stuff, like, they're doing this with a lot of, I think, you know, they're doing it with a lot of care.
Absolutely.
I don't know,
No, that I think that it feels absolutely true.
Do you think the film deserves to be subject to this kind of scrutiny?
Yeah, of course, because I want to watch it critically. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
And I guess that's what I'm getting at. In the way, like, so if there was somebody who came along and stuck us all in a room and held us accountable, do you know what I'm saying? Like, would you,
what do you mean?
In terms of, like, watching something critically and taking it apart, but not having any like real substance behind it. Like, do you ever feel, like, self-conscious that, like, maybe we're watching films in a way that, like, isn't giving the filmmakers space to just, like, be them artful selves?
I mean, I feel this way from my end of the business, at least, is like so much of what I watch. It's like you could come into it with the kind of critical lens that we got, and going to USC, like the film school.
Yeah. Are you a Tyler or are you a Aaron?
Being in a program where you're looking at everything, you're being like, well, this isn't Jean-Luc Godard. This is not Ingmar Bergman.
Yes.
I'm watching Idris Elba fight a lion and beast. This is not to me. This is not Satyajit Ray. This is not Kurosawa. This is not This is not everything I love. Everything I like. You know, this is not that kind of art. But I think the movie is saying that it's, you know, going back to my point, I think it's okay to appreciate both. But I think for anything, like, it's okay to, like, be like, okay, like, these are different things.
Yeah.
Beast is gonna make more money in movie theaters, you know, the Idris Elba movie, than, you know, After Sun, which I don't know if either you watched, which is a very, very interesting, but very much like a film school lovers movie.
I want to see.
It's gonna make way more money and reach way bigger of an audience and be maybe more of a cultural conversation outside of LA and New York.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, that's good, I think. And you don't necessarily have to, like, it doesn't have to be. I think having a very narrow critical lens is in some ways limits your enjoyment of things. So
I think it's like this. You also mentioned that this. You think this movie is successful in making kind of a. In being a commercially viable, as far as being a commercially viable project, that was maybe the way you put it.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, to this movie's credit, I think it really is bridging. It's doing. Ideally, this is what, in my opinion, what films should do. They should operate on two levels. It's like you should. You know, someone who is less of a serious moviegoer should be able to get some amount of enjoyment and something meaningful out of it. And then on a deeper level, people who are really, like, scrutinizing and picking apart the thing, they should also be able to get something compelling out of it.
For sure.
And I think this movie does that. I think it has there's some really really strong writing. There's some really kind of very intellectually stimulating themes in here that are actually there's a lot there. There's a lot to pick apart. There's really really in-depth really nuanced characters and whose conflicts and internal conflicts and things aren't spoon-fed to you at all, in my opinion.
Right.
And that I think that's actually what something like a show like Succession has lent to storytelling. Thank fucking God. Because they don't spoon feed you anything about those characters. You have to gather things about characters through how they behave and different sort of. You have to really gather things through subtext, and thankfully a show like Succession has made that more acceptable, and I think you see that in this movie where nothing about any of these characters is genuinely spoon fed to you. The only time I felt like it was when with the finance guys,
those are probably the
tortillas
thinnest.
with the tax thing. I was like, that was the one thing I was like, could we have changed this? But that's just me. That's just me because that felt like that was spoon feeding. I was like, we don't need everything else was so artful. I don't know that we needed that to play out like this.
Yeah.
But I was making a fucking point. Fuck.
It was a good point too.
It was a good point. Yeah.
I think this movie does that though. I think this movie is successful because I could hear people just casually enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I'm also there's something very, very artful playing out that requires a little more poking and prodding. And I think if you poke and prod this thing, there's a lot in here. Mm-hmm. It's not just nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Granted, not that that's the bar is nonsense or pretty good.
Right.
But yeah, this movie's it's doing something. It's doing something. I can't say it's my favorite movie that I've seen this year.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. The more we've talked about it, the more I've enjoyed it. I'm actually thinking about some of the craft behind everything.
Yeah, I just feel when I walked out of the film, it made me. I never felt in terms of the conversation of antagonism earlier. Am I a Tyler when I go to a restaurant, or am I
or to a movie, or to a TV show?
Well, but that's the thing though. It does make me wonder. Am I like that with films? To what degree am I? Learning everything I can, but am I not actually giving back, when it comes to making films or contributing to the art?
That begs the question again. I really think the Tyler character is a great fucking character. And his motivations are so murky to me, but in a way that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I was like, what's the...
You want to know more.
What's the impetus
there? In that
there?
moment when Chef whispered in his ear, I want to know what he said.
Because what is it about? Is he genuinely... But Tyler's genuinely passionate, right? Or is he not? Is it all kind of hollow?
This is what I was getting with the negation of the negation. I think he believes he is genuinely impassioned. And I think there's something dark and nefarious under the surface that is secretly pathological that he intrinsically cannot get rid of.
Yeah. Perhaps it's that he idolizes the chef because he just wants to be that. He's unable to appreciate it without trying to insert himself into it.
But he's also not willing to do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The scene where Ray Fiennes says, and he's tasting the lamb chop or whatever, that is just bad.
Yeah.
That shit was so electric. That was one of my favorite. I just started I actually didn't really do all right, we'll be right back and we're going to close out on the Movie X podcast. And we're back, Movie Addicts Podcast. Yeah, that moment was the one that made me genuinely belly laugh because I love Ray Fiennes.
Yeah.
Just cooking him.
Absolutely.
It's just hilarious to me. But
yeah.
I also anyway. But we're running low on time here.
It's time to wrap it up.
It's time to wrap it up. Now I really think my opinion of the movie changed. This is an instance, Gabe. We've had a few like this. Where my opinion of the movie, kind of like Nope, even where my opinion of the movie might be kind of changing in real time.
Really?
It kind of might need a rewatch for me.
Okay.
Wow.
I like it.
I
like it more than
I will say. I wanted to prep a little bit for the pod. If I'm coming on here, I didn't want to come in here sounding like a fool.
No, you did not sound like a fool at all. You said a lot of smart shit. I was sort of.
No, you saved the podcast today, Andy.
No. But what I want to say is that I think this movie. I would also say that I came out of the movie being I felt like that was really straightforward and didn't really. activate any of like my intrigue. Like I feel like I wasn't like, oh, what's going on in this direction? I was like Hong Chau's character. I was like, I don't really know what's going on there. I feel like this movie really rewards, and I think in like doing some research on it, hearing the influences behind it, like, you know, something like Gosford Park was a big influence on this.
Yeah.
You know, like Luis Buñuel's work, you know, way back in like the 50s and 60s was a big influence on it. I think it's one that rewards just like a little bit more like, conversation, you know, and I think that's the way like, you know, this movie's kind of made to be consumed.
And absolutely. And I think it does. And I'm realizing that now, like having talked with you guys about it, I think my opinion of it has become more positive.
Hell yeah. So I guess that leads us to our final question.
The big question.
Andy.
Is it a cock up or is it a lock up? Andy, you
I'm gonna say it's a light lockup because I think this movie works, and I think this movie does something that I feel like a lot of movies fail to do, in the sense of actually giving you something that is like graspable, and watchable and enjoyable. But I would say where the movie leaves me wanting more. The movie does leave me wanting more, and I would say that mostly comes in through all the characters who are not attendees in the restaurant. You know, we really, really don't get enough or a good
about the staff,
you know, idea into what the staff is. I would say in that sense, the movie, you know, does a little bit of a disservice because there's no, you know, you get all the haha, look at these like rich people, you know, but you don't get the but what is it like for, you know, chef number 4. Who lives on this island and like has to every day wake up and like work under this guy. You know? I kind of wish there was a little bit more of that, and I feel like a lot of movies that have like kind of the upstairs, downstairs, you know, like the attendees and the staff, you know, kind of do that. White Lotus does that really well, I think too. But for me, I'll give it a light lockup, and I'll say that knowing that this movie is not gonna. I don't think this is like in my top 10 of the year or anything like that. But coming away from it, thinking about it more, I'm more in positive favor towards this movie.
Yeah,
hell yeah.
I think it's a clock up for me. Pending a potential lockup.
Ooh.
On a rewatch, this thing might get a lockup. I'm realizing because I like the writing a lot. I really like the writing.
Yeah.
I'm realizing the writing is pretty. It's pretty. Is deft the right word? Perhaps maybe. It might deft. Yeah, I think deft.
I think that's the word you're looking for.
Yeah, like it's very like there's some real sewing going on.
Yeah,
which
nuance.
I like. Yeah. I think there's almost like some characters I could do without, and I think maybe outside of that, I think this thing's really strong.
Yeah.
So I think it's a clock up. It might, you know, turn into a lock up for me.
It's a clock up. It's a clock up.
For you, it's a clock up.
And it's going to stay a clock up.
All right.
I walked out of the theater definitely wanting more as well.
Okay.
You know what it was ultimately for me? Yeah, I felt like the first 70 minutes of the film, there were just certain things that I wanted more of. There were certain things I wanted less of, whether it was some of the art design or some of the story beats. And then ultimately when the cheeseburger moment happened, it honestly did not feel earned yet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's an honest critique. I hear that. Yeah.
Wow.
I felt there was either an additional sequence that had to take place in order for her to be pushed to the degree. Like I almost felt like she had to self-generate the confidence to stand up and do the burger moment, or they should have gotten into it faster. Like I would have loved if she walked into the fucking restaurant, kicked the barrel in, and said, "Chef, I'm sending the food back." And whatever shit happened between kicking the barrel in and the burger, we didn't need, you know? But there was just something in the final act was not clicking for me.
Well, there you have it.
So you got to watch it.
I almost would have liked this thing to be a little more abrasive, and I would have liked to be confronted by it a little. I would have liked to have felt more confronted by it than, because we had that whole like conversation about
are we watching it or are we meant to be analyzing ourselves?
Like Bodies, one of our favorite movies that we've reviewed, because that thing was, speaking of confrontational,
for sure
that thing was just. Have you seen Bodies?
I haven't.
Andy, it's pretty nuts.
It's very deep.
It's kind of like, I'm telling you, it's not gonna be what you think it is. And Gabe and I were like, literally, I was in the theater like, and the women sitting behind me were like laughing there, and I was like, oh no.
Me and Dale might be like projecting way too much onto it, but I watched the trailer.
It became like high art. It was really something.
I mean, I've heard it's amazing. Yeah,
it's pretty. got totally slept on, which sucked, and I hated the release date it got. I think sucked because I think it really could have been more of a hit. And damn.
I also feel like the menu.
You a little more.
I kind of wanted the menu to be scarier. I know it's a thriller, but it was marketed to me as a horror film.
That is true. It is kind of billed as.
I really wanted it to be scarier.
It is billed as a horror movie, and I feel like it's not scary because, again, you can't actually put yourself in the seat of the people who were there at the table. You know, for as much as it's like watching people in a zoo, you know, you can't actually be like scared. It gets scary once they point it at you. You know.
I also wish more of the people had a relationship with each other before the film. Like the whole trailer was leading up to the idea that like this person has all these behind secrets with accounts, and this person has pictures of them, and this person has this on their little tortillas, and like there was just something. There was something that I was like, I could use more threading between these characters.
Yeah, for sure.
You know.
Well, there you have it. We got to get going here because we got
yes,
Andy and I got a hard out here.
Go, baby, go. Fly, be free.
And, well, this has been the Movie Addicts Podcast. I'm Dale.
I'm Gabe.
This is Andy.
I'm an honored guest.
So. And the esteemed guest, now an Attic person, officially inducted. And, hope everyone had a great weekend.
Oh, yeah.
I'm an Attic head now.
Let's go. That's Attic Kid. Attic Kid. I like that.
All right.
That's cool.
That's that.
Yeah.
Bing, bang, boom.
All right. There we go.
Bing, bang, boom.